Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host this evening, Alex, and with me I have Dan.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. We're recording a little bit early this week because we do have a midweek game against Bristol City Thursday morning our time, Wednesday night in the UK, before we face Bolton this weekend. We're also going to look ahead to the West Brom game the following Saturday because we won't have an episode next week. I'll be away on my, well, honeymoon of sorts. So we're looking all the way ahead to that West Brom game Saturday week. We'll see how much we have to talk about that one. It's still a little bit far away. But we'll look first at that draw with Preston on the weekend, which was um, in a positive way. It was a very disappointing result, if that makes sense. I guess after talking last week about how flat we were the previous game against Sheffield United, it was really positive to see that Adkins basically went with the formation we were suggesting, which was having Martin flanked with Grzycki and Bowen, really giving us a bit more attacking impetus, and it really paid off in the sense that we created a lot of chances, but basically man of the match for Preston was the woodwork because I lost count of the amount of times that we hit. I think we basically got the woodwork bingo by hitting both uprights and the crossbar. And then of course also completed the set by having the complete skying of a shot from dead in front from Lehigh as well. So we created plenty of chances. We did score a goal, albeit from the spot. But then it was all undone with a very last minute equaliser from Preston. So disappointing that we couldn't get all 3 points, but looking at the positives, it was quite good to see us actually going out attacking, creating those chances, and looking like a side that could score goals. So I guess there are positives to take out of it, even though it was a frustrating result in the end.
Yeah, when I woke up and I saw the score and I saw a 1-1 draw with Preston, I wasn't particularly impressed by that. And then when I looked at like the timeline, I saw we'd got a penalty and then they'd scored like at the death. I was probably more disappointed. But just then after I've watched the highlights, it looks like we were just desperately unlucky. Like we probably that game should have been. We were talking about it needed to be a game where we go and blow them out of the water, and by all accounts, it really could well have been that. Um, Plenty of really good chances, really good play from those in the front three. Even Reece Burke had a great shot from
Yeah,
distance.
yeah.
So yeah, very good attacking play. Yeah, unlucky to get the all 3 points. The thing that does concern me though, or that I was thinking about, was doesn't that mean our last 3 goals or 4 goals have all been
Mm,
penalties?
Yeah, that thought did cross my mind. I think it is something like that. I know it's definitely the last two. I know there was the Borough goal, and may well have been the
Oh,
goal before that as well. Um, because Bowen's the one who scored our last however many goals it is now because he's scored from the spot for us. He's also scored from open play. So we lost to Wigan was our um, last goal before the Barra goal. That might have been from open play. It doesn't say from Bowen, but there might have been a few others. I think Derby as well. No, that was Kane from open play. So it looks like it's basically the Wigan game, then Borough, then Preston. So what's that? One, two, three, four, five, 6 games we've scored 3 goals, two of them from the spot. So, I mean, you're right. It's a bit concerning, and yeah, it'd be great to see Martin get off the mark. I was almost tempted to see if, and it almost looked like from Bowen's body language, whether he sort of half considered giving the penalty to Martin. It's almost one of those situations, you've seen it at other clubs. I think it was at Arsenal where was it Lacazette gave it to Aubameyang or the other way around, where they kind of gave each other the penalty to get that player off the mark. It
mm,
just gives that player a bit of confidence. It's just a penalty from the spot, but it's still finding the back of the net. It can help. Um, you saw it on the weekend in the A-League. It was, I think, Taggart for Brisbane Roar
oh,
scored a goal incorrectly or correctly, depending on your point of view, gets called offside, but he has that confidence, and 2 minutes later he does score. So it's funny how a player's mind works and where they get confidence from. And it would be great to see Martin just get one in the back of the net so he can kind of get off and going. Same with Grzycki. It'd be great to see him score a goal because he was one of our best, I thought, against Preston, and he really sort of ran the show with his attacking play and his pace. And it would be great to see him get off the mark. And I think a few of those attacking players, once they start scoring, we've seen it with Bowen. I mean, he took a while to get going, but if we can see a few of those guys start to get going, I do think the goals will come. It's just that first goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. They're not that far away. I mean, if we can continue to play like we did against Preston, then we'll we'll start picking up points. We actually really took the game to them, and if we play like that over the next, I mean, the other games we're going to talk about tonight, I'd probably expect, I'd be looking at least 5 points from those three games.
Well, we can talk about Bristol City first of all as the first of those three games, and it's probably the most challenge. Well, I should say West Brom's probably the most challenging of the three, but Bristol City is certainly one of the challenging games that we have coming up. Bolton probably uh, less so, but Bristol City sitting in 10th. I think they've got a win, a draw, and a loss from their last three games, so it's a bit of a mixed bag for them. Um, they're one of those sides that are sort of that middle of the table pack where you could almost go to their go to play them and sort of expect to be able to walk away with some points, but at the same time you could easily walk away on the wrong side of a 3-0 loss. So it all depends on which side turns up for us, whether we go out with the same kind of confidence and attacking ability that we showed against Preston, or whether Adkins goes back into his shell and puts out a really defensive lineup to try and just take a point. I mean, I would back the side that we saw against Preston to come away with something at Bristol City. And it was sort of like we were talking about with the Sheffield United game, where once we went 1-0 down and we actually started to attack, we looked really good, but we only did it for the last 15 minutes. If we did it for the whole game, we may well have got something from the game. So it'd be great to see that for the whole 90 minutes against Bristol City.
Yeah, I think there's enough of a turnaround that I think they should be able to pretty much put out almost an unchanged lineup. But obviously, but you've also got another game only a couple of days later with Bolton. So somewhere in these few fixtures, there's going to be some changes. I just hope that we can minimize them where we can to keep as much consistency in the performances. But I think, yeah, if we play like we did against Preston, I'm fairly confident that we'll get at least a point from Bristol. So
I just really hope that we don't see Adkins do what he did in the game leading up to the Reading fixture. I can't remember who it was against now, where he rotated the team and rotated about half of the players, and then basically with one eye on the Reading fixture, which we then lost. So, we could look at the Bolton game as the more important fixture and try and rest some players against Bristol and try and be too clever, drop points against Bristol City, and then also drop points against Bolton. So I think you're right. I think it would be great to see some consistency. We know there'll be some rotation, but I think if we can keep that attacking trio together, and I mean, we're just saying, that it's really important for Martin and Grzycki to get off the mark in the league. If they could score a goal against Bristol City, all of a sudden you go into that Bolton game thinking, a couple of these guys are really in form. We could really put a few past them. But if we start rotating the side, if we see, Campbell and Martin named up top against Bristol City with, I don't know, Henriksen and Batty in midfield and Irvine and Bowen gets dropped to the bench again and Grzycki's on the bench or something, all of a sudden you think, well, where's the consistency in the side? Where's the confidence going to come from these players? And you start to think, well, are they actually going to be able to get something from Bolton? So it's that risk, and we've seen it before with Adkins where he's sort of tried to be a bit too tricky, and I just hope he can sort of learn his lesson and put out a consistent side.
yeah, I think what Atkins really needs to do here is yes. So from Preston on the weekend to Bolton on Saturday, we're going to have three games in a week, and that can be a lot. Um, but I think is going to have to come down to individual loads. If someone comes off after playing Bristol and they're not going to be right to play Bolton, then just change them. But I don't think
Yeah,
anyone should be changed without it being completely necessary, because following Bolton, they've got a week. A
Yeah,
full week to recover, and I think it all starts to settle down a bit now, and we're just about back to most weeks is just one game a week. So
yeah. And I think you're right. And I think it should be more of a case of, as you say, see how the players are after Bristol City, and if necessary, you rotate against Bolton. But if as I'm sort of suggesting, if we could get a few players starting to look really good against Bristol City, you know, players. I mean, at least from my experience, if you're in form, you want to play games. Your sore leg doesn't hurt quite so much if you've just scored a couple of goals, and you'll be keen to get out there for the next game. Um, Whereas if you get rested against Bristol City, but you're kind of carrying an injury or something, and then you come back in against Bolton, and you've had that game off, and suddenly all of a sudden, your rhythm gets interrupted a bit. It's all a bit different. So, like it is a tough one, and I know you do have to sort of manage players, and I always find it a bit funny. And we heard it with Burnley this season when they had their Europa campaign, where the commentators all sort of saying, "Oh well, look, it's unusual for these Burnley players. They're not used to playing two games in a week, and so on and so forth." It's the same sort of thing with us when we were in Europa a couple of seasons ago, and you kind of think, well, to be fair, championship clubs play two games in a week as well, so it's not that unusual for players to play two games in a week. It's really only if you spend your entire career as a lower Premier League player that you're not playing two games a week. So um, I would think that most of these guys could manage it, and it's only really someone like a Henriksen who's kind of carrying an injury and didn't start against Preston on the weekend, who might make an appearance against Bristol City and then might start against Bolton, depending on how someone like Batty pulls up potentially. But I would like to see us name as strong a side as possible against Bristol City. But what's your take on the game, and do you see the possibility that we can get something out of it, or is this one of the tougher sort of games?
um, probably a bit of both. I think it will be a tough game. They're like Bristol's not going to be Preston. They're going to be a more of a challenge for us. But I think that yes, if we play our best 11, and basically based on the last few games, our best 11 has to be the 11 that played against Preston on the weekend. They go out and they play the way that they've played, and I see no reason all, despite the multitude of missed chances, they should have been viewing that game disappointedly but positively. The
Yeah,
performance was good. They created lots of chances, and it was only a issue essentially in finishing.
and
So that's
and in the law of averages, you say, okay, so they missed a whole bunch of chances against Preston. Maybe a couple of those go in against a Bristol City or a Bolton, and all of a sudden the scoreline looks completely different.
yeah. I'm just glad. I don't want to get sucked too far off track again, but I'm just glad that they're getting in positions, they're taking shots, because there was it wasn't too long ago where we didn't we weren't really confident enough even to be shooting on goal. We were just trying to get it so perfect and that we were trying to make a guaranteed goal all the time. Glad to see some shots coming in from around the place and trying some different things in and around the penalty area just to try something, because we've got really good creative players. So um, back to Bristol. I think yes, we will go. I think they'll go good. I think it'll will probably only. I think it'll probably only be a draw. I don't even know if I think it's going to be a low scoring tight draw. Um, but
Which,
I'm
yeah, which I think we could be
optimistic
happy
for a
with.
win.
Yeah,
I'm
I think if we came away with a score draw at Bristol City, I think we could be pretty happy with that. So I agree. I mean, I could see a 1-1 sort of result, and hopefully we can walk away with something from that game. We've sort of touched on that Bolton game already in terms of player management. Um, I guess we can sort of look at the Bolton game from the perspective that if we're as expected, potentially Adkins does rotate a little bit against Bristol. Um, would you want to see the same lineup that took on Preston against Bolton again and sort of take that attitude of, well, if we're going to rest players and we rest them against the better sides, then we've got to be naming our strongest team against these weaker sides. I mean, I say the weaker, but they are 7 points above us in the table, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. That it wasn't too long ago they were being talked about as being in administration and all sorts of awful things happening. Their budgets, you know, a shadow of some of the clubs in the championship, but they're still a whole lot more competitive than we are. Um, do you see it as a game that I guess like the Preston game, it's almost a must win?
Yes, is the short answer. Like for them to be 18th, 7 points above us, like that, there's that gap that I've been talking about. Like it's just creeping and starting to widen and widen and widen, and these games. I mean, we're almost like, I mean, we're not really getting to that point, but it feels like we're getting to the point where every game is a must-win game.
Which is kind of
So
crazy when you think about it. That I mean,
we're only a third, a quarter of the way into the season,
yeah.
and we're already like languishing at the bottom end.
And I saw the comments from Amber Nectar today where they sort of said that for all the talk that we're a squad that's underachieving and that we should be a whole lot higher than we are, which I mean is a comment that we've made a couple of times on here. The fact of the matter is that it isn't a great squad, and it's hard to argue with that when you look at the performances that we've put in pretty consistently over the last 12 months. And I mean, yeah, you can make the argument that a lot of that's down to Adkins, but without being too harsh, you look at guys like Device, Burke, um, potentially like Lehigh, basically the entire defense really, and then Batty in midfield. They're good serviceable players, but I would say that they're potentially just good League One players or very weak Championship players. Then it's not like the squad we had under Bruce in the Championship, where it was essentially a Premier League squad in the Championship. This squad does have a couple of quality players. You know, you've got your Jared Bowens and your Grzycki's and arguably your Irvines and guys like that. But even Irvine, really, I mean, he was at Burton last season, and yes, he scored 6 goals for them or whatever it was, and he was quite good for them. Sorry, the season before, he was quite good. But even he's arguably just a mid-table championship player at best. No disrespect to him, but it's not the squad that we once had, and potentially our expectations of what these guys should be doing is a little bit too high.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. If and you're right, if you actually sit down and you take a deep breath, take a step back, and you look at the squad on paper, it's not really that strong. We've been crying out for proper defenders. Like that was, I think that was like one of the main things we talk about in like when we had talked about one of the early episodes this season was about what players do we need to bring in and what are the big holes we're going to have, and we were saying look, we really need to get in a really good experience like centre back and some really good like defenders to fill, and uh, I'm still unconvinced on Elphick so far. He's experienced, but just some of the things he does, you just go, what? How, does they do? He's, every now and then, or not even every now and then, almost every game, there's at least one or two fouls which he commits, which are just stupid. And I think, like he has helped his leadership and that his experience has helped directing those younger defenders around, but I could definitely, like, if I could trade him for someone else, I would. Like I'm
It's a
not
kind way
that.
of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, like I just don't think in the key positions, like you talk about your spine. All right, so David Marshall has been outstanding this season, surprisingly. Based on, I mean, he had never actually played a lot of football or for us before, but whenever he did, it was shaky at best. Um, but he's been really good this year, and can't really fault him for apart from maybe one or two goals that he
Yeah,
actually did something wrong. But
that Aston Villa game at the start of the season sort of had everyone, taking a sharp breath because it looked like he was going to carry on with that poor form from previous seasons. But no, he's really pulled his socks up since then.
so he's been really good. But then yeah, you go into the center of defense, and for the first 4 games or something, we were running Device and
I think it was
um,
Burke. It might have been Burke, and
yeah,
yeah,
it
but
might
I
have
think it
been.
was Burke and Device, and then I think it
Yeah,
was potentially McDonald came in for a few games as well.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we didn't really we had no real experience um, in there, and Elphick's come in, and it has improved, but we're still that center at the back is one of the weakest in the division, and our midfield is the same sort of thing. Like I think Batty's been outstanding for where he is. Like when you consider where he's at in his career and how much experience, first team experience he has, he's been doing outstanding. Henriksen has continued to be mediocre, in my opinion. He hasn't really stood out for extended periods. Every now and then he'll have a brilliant game or part of a game, but he's so up and down that it's really hard to. He's just I don't not I'm not surprised. Like I don't know. He seems like a strange choice to be captain to me because he doesn't really lead the team, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, and then like you move up forward and you're looking at your forwards, and I think like Campbell's been doing a good like whoever's been up there, Campbell's doing a good job. Martin's starting to find his feet a little bit. I'm starting to appreciate his work a little more. But if you look at that, we've really just top and tailed like our spine. Like there's that whole middle section of the field
Yeah, and it
which
is,
is just sort of missing.
and it is harsh because you look at it as a team and you think, okay, well, the 11 that we put out against Preston actually looks quite good, but when you break it down into the actual individual players and you just think about, well, if I'm being super critical of the quality of that player compared to what we've been used to over the last 6, 7 years, really, they're a long way off the 11 that we would have had the last time we were in the championship under Bruce. And it's kind of harsh to say, but I guess that's sort of where we are. And until this takeover that's sort of dragging on now, until that sort of takes place and we can see any reinforcements come in January, um, that's sort of where we're at. But back onto the Bolton game, what would your score prediction for this one be? Do you see this one is finally the chance to get a win?
Yes, I think as long as we get a positive performance against Bristol, then I expect to win against Bolton. If we don't, then I can really see us just continuing to fall in a heap and it all going terribly wrong. But overall, I'm expecting to probably a 2-0 win against Bolton.
Yeah, okay. I'd agree. I think I could see something similar. I think you're right. If we're really lackluster against Bristol City, I could see us sort of struggling again against Bolton and maybe getting a 0-0 or a 1-1 draw with them. If we can go out and look really good against Bristol City, I think we could get a decent win against Bolton, which would be sorely needed. West Brom a week and a bit from now, about 10 days from now, next Saturday night. Um, it's an interesting one because I think they're third in the table at the moment. Lost last time out to Wigan though. But we have seen against the better sides this season so far, Leeds, Borough, United. We do sort of raise our game to their level and we do get pretty decent results against them. But West Brom to me, I mean, Borough are a very defensive side. Leeds missing a whole heap of their attacking players, and Sheffield United, whether it's just that we match up decently on them, we'd already beaten them earlier in the season. All sort of explains potentially the results we got against those sides. But West Brom to me are almost the most dangerous side that we've played this season or will play this season. And I'm in danger of sounding like Adkins in saying that I think that they are one side that look very certain to go up. It's the Dwight Gale effect, I guess, because he seems to just go to sides in the championship and score a bunch of goals and get them promoted. I think he's done it with Palace and Newcastle so far, and he's doing it again with West Brom. They're looking great. They've got a very deep, very strong Premier League side, very much similar to I keep coming back to it, the side we had under Bruce in the championship, where it basically feels like a Premier League squad in the championship. I think they've actually still got Livermore in their side as
Yeah,
well. So
I just looked up their squad, and there's
yeah,
Livermore, Connor Townsend's obviously just gone there.
yeah.
They've
I
got
don't
a
know
few
if
players that My Hill's there, a few
yeah,
guys we used to
yeah. So
have.
a
Yeah.
few old boys. I don't even know if Townsend's been starting for them. So I'll have a quick look at that. But what's your take on that game? And do you see us sort of again raising our game to their standard, or are you sort of worried this could be one where we get blown away?
I think, look, I based on like as you said, like the other games we played against those teams right at the top, I expect that we probably will go out and will play like to them, and it'll be a close game, which will be all the more frustrating for not being able to get 3 points against Preston, and not being able to get points against Reading, and not being able to get points against like it's just.
Yeah.
But yeah, I expect that. I'm looking at their squad right now, and I'm just going, okay, you could, like, when we're just talking about squad quality and that, like, they have a fair bit of quality throughout their squad.
So I think they've got
So,
Kieran Gibbs at left back, so he's keeping Townsend out of the side. And you think Kieran Gibbs a couple of years ago was playing for Arsenal.
mm,
Harvey Barnes in midfield for them, who's just a kid, I think, but he's one that's sort of under the radar a little bit, but he's having a pretty stellar season. He's one of those rising stars, I think, who so yeah, so he's on loan. I think he's on loan from Leicester.
yeah,
But he's having a great season. I think he's got 5 goals in 13 appearances already, which from midfield's pretty fantastic.
yeah, that's not bad. But yeah, look, they've got plenty of Premier League experience, and I think they will be hard. They'll be hard to beat for sure. Look, I would probably be happy just if the scoreline is low, um, based on, like, if we can get the points against these teams in the coming next couple of games, then I can probably accept a loss against West Brom. But
Yeah.
obviously, like, I'd be happy to take a point. I'll be happy to take anything out of the West Brom game. I'll be happy to take um, yeah, anything, as long as it doesn't end up 3, 4, 5, against us. And like, and if we put in a good performance, then that's all I'm really hoping for
Yeah,
sometimes. you
yeah.
know.
I think looking ahead to these 3 games as a group, if we came away with 4 points, I'd be really happy. Obviously 5 points would be fantastic, undefeated through the 3 games. But if we can go away with 4 points, I think I'd be pretty happy. 2 points, I'd probably accept. It means we've picked up a point at either West Brom or Bristol City. Or well, sorry, I should say, well, yeah, we've picked up points at one of those two, and then picked up a point against Bolton, which wouldn't be too happy with, but better than nothing. I think disaster would be 1 point or zero out of the 3 games. We need to be picking up at least 2 points. 3 points, probably really the minimum that we'd want, 3 points. Um, but yeah, I think with West Brom it's mostly about damage limitation. I think if we could come away with a 1-0 or a 2-0 loss, I'd still be reasonably happy, depending as you're saying, depending on how we go against um, Bristol City and Bolton as well. But I wouldn't be upset if we lost to West Brom as long as it wasn't, a 4-0 or a 5-0 sort of defeat, which we did see a couple of times last season. So it would be good to avoid in that game. Um, any final thoughts on these 3 games as we look ahead to them?
Oh, don't not really. Just yeah, just if I just think we just really need to just try and play. If that's a formation, like, it seemed to work against Preston, and we played a lot more fluidly and with a lot of attacking impetus. And I think that we need to maintain that and continue to use that over the next, well, hopefully for the majority of the season, but at least definitely over these next 3 games. Because I think even that we control the ball a lot better, and so playing even that attacking style of football against West Brom, who maybe has the potential to do more damage at the other end, but if we're taking it to them, it's harder for them then to return favor. So
Definitely, definitely. No, absolutely. Hopefully, well, that's it. I mean, fingers crossed we can keep that formation together. See minimal rotation unless absolutely necessary, and we can go out and get a couple of positive results in these games. But thanks for joining me, Dan.
No worries.
Thanks everyone for listening in. We've got Bristol City coming up this Thursday morning, our time, before a couple of games against Bolton and West Brom to look forward to. And hopefully, when we return in a couple of weeks, we'll have at least those 3 or 4 points that we're hoping for in those games, if not more. But until then, come on, City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning back 'cause you're out.